Theodore fell in love with the girl who sat next to me in class and asked me to help him pursue her. He had me run the 800-meter race on her behalf, bring her breakfast, and even cover for them when they skipped class to be alone together. But eventually, the school caught on to their relationship. In front of everyone, Theodore suddenly pulled me into his arms and said with a lazy smile, "You've got it all wrong, this is my girlfriend." Because of that, I took the fall and got punished instead of the class belle. That night, I broke down and cried. Theodore handed me a tissue with a careless air. "Haven't you liked me for a long time? Isn't being my girlfriend in name not enough for you?" Chapter 1. Outside the classroom, the rain poured down. I looked at the empty seat next to mine and instantly knew Theodore and Undine had another fight. During the break, Theodore walked up to me and knocked on my desk with his knuckle. "Where is she?" I tapped my pen on the page of incorrect answers. "Think she went out." He stared at me for 2 seconds before curling his lips into a cold smile. "It's pouring out there, and you let her go alone?" There was no hint of amusement in his eyes. That was his signal that he was mad. I put down my pen in a panic and asked softly, "Should I go look for her now?" Theodore didn't reply, but I understood his silence. I pushed my chair back and stood up to run out. The next second, Theodore grabbed my wrist and threw me an umbrella, turning his head with mocking tone. "Don't say it's mine, or she'd rather get soaked than use it." I nodded, took the umbrella, and left. Behind me, I heard classmates whispering, "Vicky's such a simp. She used to go to and from school with Theodore, basically his little sidekick. Now that he has a girlfriend, she's still willing to be their sidekick? You don't know the whole story. Stop assuming. It's not like she likes Theodore. Vicky's dad is just the law's driver. She's not from the law family. You think someone like her could study at a school like ours otherwise?" I opened the umbrella and dashed into the rain. Good. No one noticed I used to like Theodore. Chapter 2. I found Undine in the basketball gym, taking shelter from the rain. The moment she saw the umbrella, she recognized it was Theodore's. "Vicki, can I ask you something?" She seemed to be in a good mood, looping her arm through mine. "Has Theodore ever been this nice to any other girl?" I thought for a moment and shook my head. "You're the first." Undine's eyes curved as she smiled, tilting her head at me. "You really know how to talk. Vicki, is it because people like you, who live under someone else's roof, are all good at saying things to please others?" Then she quickly pulled back her smile and pressed her lips together. "I'm sorry. Did I offend you?" Her eyes were full of bright, glistening guilt. I looked away, used to this. "It's fine. I'm not mad." Undine smiled again and took my hand, walking toward the gym doors. "Vicki, you're such a nice person." Chapter 3. As we reached the door, I instinctively reached out my hand. "I'll hold the umbrella for us." Undine paused for a moment, but didn't hand it to me. Instead, she seemed to ponder something, then asked, "Did Theodore say you could use the umbrella?" I froze. After a moment, I replied softly, "No." Undine glanced at the sky outside, then opened the umbrella and stepped into the rain alone. "Good thing the rain's not that heavy. If you run back, you won't get too wet." I'm heading off now. The next class was with the grade director. She didn't tolerate lateness. I didn't have time to overthink it. I just ran out into the rain. Passing Undine, I sprinted back to the academic building as fast as I could. But still, I got pretty soaked. Theodore happened to be waiting downstairs, clearly for Undine. He glanced at me, then frowned. "You don't know to use an umbrella?" I brushed the wet hair stuck to my face aside, just about to answer when someone behind me cut in. The umbrella was with me. Undine lowered her eyes and spoke softly. "I didn't let her use it." "What? Theodore? Do you give things to me just so any girl can share them?" Theodore let out a cold laugh and walked over to take her hand. "Got it. She shouldn't have used the umbrella. That better?" Undine let out a sulky hum but didn't pull her hand away. "Vicki may be small and skinny, but she looks healthy enough. I wouldn't have stopped her from using the umbrella if I thought a little rain would hurt her." Theodore squeezed her palm, raising an eyebrow lazily. "You're full of logic." "Huh." I followed behind them at just the right distance, not too close, not too far, quietly praying I wouldn't catch a cold and fall behind in class. After all, I couldn't afford the school's expensive tutoring fees. As for getting rained on, compared to the dramatics of last time, this was barely worth mentioning. Chapter 4. The last time Theodore and Undine had a Cold War, he used me to provoke her. That time, during a long break, he deliberately placed a carton of milk on my desk. Brought this for you. Drink it while it's warm. I didn't touch it. A sense of helplessness spread through my limbs. Undine, sitting beside me, kept her head down, reading her textbook, expressionless. Theodore cast her a subtle glance, then turned to me with a smile. Tomorrow's Saturday. Didn't you always say you wanted to try bungee jumping? I'll take you. Undine finally couldn't hold it in. She looked up, eyes red, and stared straight at Theodore. Tomorrow is my birthday. You promised you'd spend it with me. Theodore let out a light scoff, his tone casual. Didn't you say you were never talking to me again? Undine burst into tears and ran out of the classroom. Theodore immediately chased after her. I quietly stared at the milk for a few seconds, then moved it over to Undine's desk. Theodore forgot that I'm lactose intolerant and afraid of heights. Milk and bungee jumping, those were Undine's favorite things. Chapter 5. Before the bell rang, Undine and I returned to our seats. She reached out and pushed open the window next to me. Though the rain had mostly stopped, the temperature hadn't warmed up yet. A chilly breeze poured into my half-damp school uniform through the collar. The cold doubled, and I couldn't help but shiver. Undine, could you maybe? Vicki, I'm so hot. I need the window open. Maybe it was the unbearable chill, but for once, I didn't give in to her. I got caught in the rain earlier. I'm a bit cold. Can we please not open it? Nope. She pouted and shook her head with an air of seriousness. Vicki, you can't be so selfish. It's not my fault you got rained on. I shouldn't have to suffer just to accommodate you. Whenever I couldn't take it anymore, my father's words would replay numbly in my mind, over and over. Vicki, do whatever Theodore tells you. Don't make him angry. For your dad's job, and for you, so you can keep studying in such a good school. Test my way out. If I could pass the entrance exams, I could finally leave this suffocating place for good. I took my eyes off Undine, focused back on the book, and didn't stop her again. Got it. Chapter 6. Good thing I went to the nurse's office in time to buy cold medicine, and kept drinking hot water nonstop. Barely kept the fever from coming, but I still felt lightheaded and foggy. So for the afternoon PE class, during free activity time, I didn't follow behind Theodore and Undine like usual, keeping an eye out for the ever-lurking disciplinary director. The director was starting to suspect they were in a relationship, but whenever he saw the three of us together, that confident look of his would turn unsure again. Chapter 7. I sat on the steps by the flag-raising platform, memorizing vocabulary. As a group of students passed by, I heard my name being mentioned. Isn't that Vicki? Where's that bastard Theodore? Why isn't he hanging around her like usual? It was a guy from the class next door. Our two classes happened to share PE today. I looked up and accidentally met Elias's eyes. He looked away casually, as if it was just a random glance. Everyone knew Elias and Theodore were sworn enemies. The guy who spoke was one of Elias's followers. Another guy replied. Someone in her class said she caught a cold, and Theodore didn't want her to get his girlfriend sick, so he told her not to come with them. They moved on quickly. I looked back down and kept memorizing my vocabulary. Chapter 8. I had no idea how much time had passed when suddenly, the light in front of me was blocked by a shadow. I looked up and saw a giant capybara. It was someone in a capybara mascot costume, standing right in front of me. The school clubs were always running all kinds of activities, so seeing someone in a mascot suit on the field wasn't unusual. Excuse me, do you need something? I looked into the dull yet calm cartoon eyes of the capybara and asked. With its plush, fingerless paws, it clumsily held out a warm cup of fruit tea to me. For me? I thought for a moment, then realized. You're from the astronomy club, right? Last time, when we voted for best club, I had voted for the astronomy club. This must be a thank you gift handed out randomly. The capybara paused for a second, then nodded. It pushed the fruit tea toward me again. I smiled slightly and took it with a quiet thanks. He tilted slightly and leaned against the column beside me. He must have handed out too many fruit teas and stopped here to rest a bit. By coincidence, the spot he chose happened to block the wind, but not the sunlight. I loosened my tense shoulders, and finally felt a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Chapter 9. After that, I kept running into the capybara whenever I was alone. He never spoke, just quietly stayed by my side most of the time. I figured he didn't have any friends either. No one paid attention to this odd little pairing of ours. Until that day, when a group of Elias's friends walked by us. What's up with Elias lately? He keeps disappearing all of a sudden. One of them suddenly pointed in our direction and burst out laughing. Go get Elias. Tell him to come see this too. Dude, the capybara's crotch is wide open, ha 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 ha. I followed the direction of his finger and finally noticed the seam between the mascot's legs had split open, exposing a piece of white plastic board underneath. The whole group of guys started laughing at once. The capybara didn't have much of a temper. He stormed toward them like he was ready to throw hands. But the guys didn't back down at all. One of them even raised his chin defiantly. Come on then. I've been dying to rip off your costume and see what class you're from. And just like that, the capybara froze. The air went awkwardly quiet. Clearly, he was scared of getting beat up by the whole group. That's why he stopped. To spare him further embarrassment, I walked over and took his plush paw, gently pulling him away from the scene. It wasn't until we were far away that I finally spoke to comfort him. Don't be mad. There were too many of them. You couldn't take them all on alone. It's smart not to let them get to you. Right after I said that, I thought I heard a faint, cold chuckle. Startled, I turned my head, but all I saw was that same deadpan, lifeless capybara face. I couldn't help but laugh. I had a feeling the person inside the costume was making the exact same face right now. Chapter 10. Vicki. A familiar voice broke the light and easy mood. I looked up and met Theodore's gaze. Half smiling, half not. What were you chatting about that made you smile like that? My smile faded instinctively, replaced with that usual stiff and numb expression. Nothing. After saying goodbye to the capybara, I walked up to Theodore. Do you need me to do something? He looked down and tugged at the corner of his lips. So every time I come looking for you, it must be because I need something? I looked up at him in confusion. Isn't it? I was genuinely puzzled. Ever since he got together with Ondine, all our communication had been reduced to things like, Ondine's on her period. The 800-meter retest is monitored by a PE teacher from another class who doesn't recognize you guys. Run it for her. Keep an eye on who's flirting with Ondine lately. Ondine joined this club, but there are too many guys in it. Sign up for the same one and act as a shield. Theodore let out a snort of amusement through his nose. He didn't say a word and walked off. And this time, his anger carried all the way until after school. When my dad came to pick us up, Theodore got in and slammed the door behind him. He threw out a cold remark, "You can take the bus home today." Dad hesitated and looked at me through the window. But in the end, he said nothing and stepped on the gas. Chapter 11. After that day, Theodore barely spoke to me. He entered a one-sided Cold War, which, honestly, gave me a bit of peace. Until that one afternoon. After school, Theodore and Ondine were caught kissing outside the school gates by the disciplinary director. Theodore reacted fast. He immediately pulled his baseball cap down over Ondine's head and grabbed her hand to run. Because of that, the director didn't get a clear look at the girl's face, but he was already convinced it was Ondine. The next day was Friday. During homeroom, the director came to our class looking for them. Theodore, Ondine, come out here with me for a moment. Ondine looked completely lost. Theodore remained seated, calm and unhurried. What's the matter, sir? The director, already boiling with frustration, exploded. Don't think you got away just because you ran yesterday. You two are dating and still act so smug? Get out here. Both of you. Theodore stood up slowly. I'm not denying anything. Just a school punishment, right? But sir, you've got the wrong girl. He walked over to our side of the room, speaking in his usual cocky, teasing tone, saying that kind of thing could ruin my relationship. You know, as our eyes met, a bad feeling crept up on me. The director asked, following his lead, "What do you mean?" In front of the whole class, Theodore stopped beside me. Then he casually draped his arm over my shoulder and gave the director a defiant grin. I mean, you've got it all wrong. This is my girlfriend. The director looked unsure. You're saying the one you were kissing yesterday was Vicki? Theodore nodded. That's right. I pushed his hand away and was about to speak up and deny it. There were limits to how much I'd obey Theodore. Taking the blame for something that could get me punished wasn't one of them. Theodore leaned in and whispered next to me. Take the fall, worst case. You'll get a demerit and my mom will yell at you. If you don't, your dad loses his job. Your choice. I froze. All the strength suddenly drained from my body. The director still didn't seem fully convinced. He came up to me to confirm. It was really you. Outside the window, the trees were being thrashed by a sudden storm. A window, left slightly ajar, slammed open. Wind and rain burst into the classroom and struck my face. I wiped the warm rain from my cheeks with my sleeve. When I looked up again, my vision had cleared a little. I moved my dry lips and said, "It was me." Chapter 12. In the hallway outside the office. It was just me and Theodore. After making us call our parents, the director had been hurriedly pulled away by another teacher. I stood by the window, silently sobbing. Theodore walked over, casually handing me a tissue. "What are you crying for?" I didn't take it. My eyes were blank as I stared at the rain-drenched leaves outside. Theodore clicked his tongue impatiently. He grabbed my chin and turned my face toward him, wiping it with the tissue. "Vicki, haven't you liked me for a long time? Now that you can be my girlfriend, at least in name, you're not happy?" I froze. The tears halted in my eyes. I was too shocked to push him away. Theodore glanced at me calmly, as if stating something utterly trivial. "The way you look at me is the same as all those other girls do. You just didn't hide it well enough. That's on you." The silence was absolute, like the air itself had gone still. I felt so humiliated. I could have drowned in it. Theodore must have realized how much of an asshole he sounded like, because he frowned and let go of me, turning his gaze away. After a long pause, I finally managed to gather my thoughts. My voice was hoarse as I answered his first question. "No, I'm not happy, because I haven't liked you in a long time. Life is already suffocating enough. Why would I still like someone who already has a girlfriend? Why would I let myself be so cheap?" Theodore's eyelashes trembled slightly. He leaned lazily against the wall, feigning indifference. "Whatever." Chapter 13. The quiet of the hallway was shattered by the sharp clack of high heels. The sound came closer and closer. I looked up in the direction it came from. The next second, a slap whipped my face to the side. "You little whore. Not even grown yet. And already so bold. You dare seduce my son?" It was Theodore's mother. I was slow to react, took a couple seconds, but didn't touch the side of my face that was stinging and numb. Instead, I slowly looked up and locked eyes with my father, who was standing not far away. His fists were clenched so tight, they were trembling, like he was holding something back with all he had. But he still didn't take a single step forward. Mrs. Law kept screaming. Even the director coming back couldn't stop her. When she raised her hand again, a cold, unfamiliar male voice cut through her shouting. "Theodore, are you this much of a scumbag because of your trashy mom?" It was the first time I'd ever heard Elias's voice. He was holding a USB drive, slightly out of breath, like he'd run here. His voice was calm, but there was a faint note of mockery underneath. "Pathetic. You can't even admit who your girlfriend is." Theodore's eyes narrowed. "What's in your hand?" Elias didn't even glance at him. "Proof of you being in heat." Chapter 14. The footage of Theodore and Undine kissing last night had been captured by a security camera outside a nearby hotel, and that hotel just so happened to be one of the properties under Elias's family business. When Undine was called in and saw the evidence, she bit her lip and questioned Elias. "Aren't you afraid I'll call the police for leaking private footage?" "You're welcome to try anytime." The director then had the homeroom teacher bring Theodore, Undine, and Elias into the office to verify the video. He himself stayed outside, looking at me skeptically, half believing, half doubting, and asked again, "What exactly is your relationship with Theodore? Were you two dating at the same time?" Mrs. Law immediately flared up. "No way. My son's not the type to two-time anyone. This little tramp must have seduced him." That was the moment my dad, who had remained silent since arriving, finally lost it. "If you insult my daughter one more time, I dare you." Mrs. Law was startled. What kind of attitude is that? Do you not want your job anymore? I don't fucking want it anymore. I don't care how much you pay. No matter how desperate I am. I won't let you people treat my daughter like this. Breathing heavily, he turned to the director and said with conviction, "My daughter isn't in a relationship." The director looked visibly pained from all the yelling. He rubbed his temples, then looked at me again. "Vicki, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you in a relationship with Theodore?" It was as if the universe had finally seen enough and handed me one more chance. This time, everyone was on my side. With my face swollen almost halfway up, I looked the director in the eye and shook my head. "No, sir, I am not in a relationship." A puddle on the windowsill reflected a rainbow-colored shimmer. Only then did I realize the storm had passed. The sky had cleared. Chapter 15. Soon, I returned to class to resume lessons. Undine and Theodore were still being kept in the office to discuss their punishment. The incident had stirred up quite a scene. The class was restless. The chatter unstoppable. Do you guys know why Elias even got involved in the first place? My pen froze mid-sentence. That's when I realized I'd forgotten to thank Elias. Someone responded. Why? For the person he likes. Who? Undine. That guy nodded sagely, full of confidence. You all don't know this, do you? There was a time Elias used to pass by our class all the time. I caught him glancing toward Undine's seat more than once. If you ask me, he probably turned bitter from love. Couldn't stand to see Undine doing well. I absently poked the tip of my pen against the desk. I didn't really agree. Something about Elias told me he wasn't the petty or jealous type. During the break, Theodore came back to gather his things. He and Undine had been temporarily suspended. He walked over to me like no one else was around. His eyes landed on the side of my face, and his brows furrowed again. I didn't think she'd hit you. In that moment, I couldn't stop her. If I had spoken up, she would have hit even harder. I pulled my chair to the side, putting distance between us. Do me a favor. Get lost. Until today, I never thought I'd get to say get lost to Theodore before graduation. The pressure that had been piling up in my chest started to slowly unravel. That sense of relief reached its peak at lunchtime, when I ran into Capybara again. I was sitting in the pavilion memorizing vocab when he showed up, holding an ice pack and a tube of ointment. He raised his little round paw and pointed at my face, telling me the ointment was for facial bruises. I winced but still managed to smile. Thanks. Maybe because the mood felt so relaxed, I suddenly had the urge to make a real friend. Are you planning to stay in that mascot costume forever? Can't we be the kind of friends who know each other's names, who've seen each other's real faces? Capybara didn't respond. I worried the headpiece was too thick and he hadn't heard me. Just as I was about to repeat it louder, he shook his head, a clear no. Then he pointed to his own face and drew a big X across it. I got the message. You mean, you think you're not good looking? He nodded. That's okay. Looks aren't the reason people become friends. I did my best to comfort him, but he wasn't moved. He even took a few steps back, arms wrapped protectively around his head. Absurd as it sounds, I could actually see the alertness in those lifeless mascot eyes, like he was scared I'd try to rip the head off. I was speechless. Chapter 16. Not long after getting rejected by Capybara, I was rejected by Elias too. That afternoon during PE, our class had joint activities with Elias's class again. I saw him sitting alone by the fountain, holding a bottle of mineral water. I gathered my courage and walked over. When he saw me approaching, his hand twisting the bottle paused for a second. I gave him a polite smile and said quietly, Elias, thank you for earlier today. He kept his eyes lowered. His voice wasn't as cold as it had been in the morning. I grew a little uneasy. After racking my brain for a way to repay him, I spoke again. How about I treat you to some milk tea? And also, Undine is my desk mate. If you want to know her interests or hobbies, you can ask me. Even though everyone across several classes had been gossiping that Elias only got involved to get revenge on Undine, I didn't completely buy it. So I chose a more subtle way to hint. But I hadn't expected Elias to react so strongly. His wrist jerked, and he dropped the bottle. It hit the ground with a thud, and he didn't bother to pick it up. Instead, he lifted his head and stared at me with a look I couldn't quite read. What are you trying to say? The pressure radiating off of him was so intense. I couldn't speak. Elias was tall. When he stood up, he loomed over me. "You think I like Undine?" I instantly realized the rumor wasn't true. Panicking, I apologized at once. "I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I really didn't mean to. It was my mistake. I'm really sorry." Elias's eyes stayed cool and indifferent. Half a minute later, he finally looked away, then brushed past me in silence and left. This time, I understood. He didn't step in because of Undine. He just genuinely couldn't stand Theodore, and wanted to give him hell. Chapter 17. Every break on Friday afternoon, the atmosphere was extra lively. As I spaced out at my desk, I suddenly remembered. Monday was my birthday. I decided I'd bake a small cake over the weekend, and bring it to school Monday to share with Capybara. With that thought, I jogged out of the classroom, hoping to run into him somewhere outside the teaching building. It wasn't until the last break period that I finally spotted him, heading toward the equipment room. By the time I caught up, he was already inside, standing with his back to me. Just as I opened my mouth to call out, I saw the capybara mascot head being lifted off. A tall boy stood underneath it. Then, he turned around. Our eyes met. We both froze. I had imagined a lot of people, but never thought it would be Elias. The same Elias who got upset at me just 2 classes ago for saying the wrong thing. He was the first to recover, but still didn't speak. His lips were tightly pressed together. A group of middle schoolers suddenly burst into the room, shouting excitedly, "Time for basketball!" One of them accidentally bumped into Elias, still in the heavy costume. He staggered a little. I instinctively reached out and caught the bulky suit, barely managing to steady him. Then, once again, it was just the 2 of us in the equipment room. He looked down at me, his lashes trembling. The bell rang out suddenly, snapping back to my senses. I let go and took several steps back. "Class is starting. I'm going back now." And then I fled. I needed time to process what I'd just learned. Even after school, I still couldn't get over the shock of meeting Elias's eyes in that moment. I was walking absent-mindedly when someone grabbed my wrist. Only then did I realize I'd nearly walked straight into a pole. "What are you thinking about? Can't even watch where you're going?" I had no idea why Theodore was suddenly here outside school. I didn't say a word, just pulled my hand away and kept walking. Theodore wasn't in uniform. In his gray hoodie and black cargo pants, he stood out starkly among all the students still in school attire. He stepped in front of me, his expression unusually serious. "My mom hitting your dad has nothing to do with me." I stopped walking, my tone calm. "My dad resigned of his own will. If you're still upset about what I said this morning, feel free to get me expelled." Theodore stared at me. "You know I wouldn't do that." I tried to change directions, but he blocked me again. His voice held no discernible emotion. "I broke up with Undine. My patience with him had long since run dry." I was about to respond, when I noticed the faint tension in his expression. That's when it hit me. I took a step back. "Theodore, you'd better not be about to tell me you just broke up and suddenly fell for me." I enunciated clearly, "Because, if you did, I'd find you absolutely disgusting." All day, I'd been testing Theodore's limits with every word. A spoiled rich boy doesn't usually let people walk all over his pride like this. But he still didn't look angry. Instead, he gave a slight tug at the corner of his mouth. "I don't know. I just came to tell you that." Theodore was about to continue, when someone suddenly clamped a hand over his mouth. 2 adult men grabbed him by the arms and pulled him away from me. Elias, completely unfazed, gave a calm command, "Make sure young Masterlaw gets home safely." Then he even patted the dust off Theodore's hoodie. Theodore struggled to no avail, and was dragged into a car. That's when I noticed the hotel next to us. It belonged to Elias's family. No wonder he could show up with backup so suddenly. Chapter 18. Elias was still in his school uniform. He avoided my gaze and jerked his chin toward the road ahead. "I'll walk you home." I felt a little awkward and softly declined. "Thanks. But Theodore's already been taken away by your guys. I can go home by myself." Elias's expression didn't change. He simply said, "Can't rule out the chance he jumps out of the car and chases after you." Then he turned and started walking ahead. I couldn't help but curl my lips into a smile. Didn't expect someone like Elias, cold and don't come near me, to actually crack a joke. We walked side by side, keeping a polite distance, just enough that even if the disciplinary director walked by, he'd only glance once and move on. He wasn't much of a talker, so it was up to me to find something to say. "Oh right. This Monday, at noon, meet me at that little pavilion again, okay? I'll bring some cake I baked myself, as a thank you for helping me this morning." Elias tilted his head to look at me. Just as I looked back in confusion, he turned away again. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Our conversation was patchy but steady. He told me the reason he never took off the mascot suit was because he thought I hated him. Thanks to Theodore, I quickly cleared that up and denied it. After that, I slowly got more comfortable around him, and our conversation started to feel more relaxed. "Really, I was so thankful you gave me fruit tea that day. If it had been milk tea, I wouldn't have been able to drink it." This was where he was supposed to ask why, so I could continue and tell him I was lactose intolerant. But instead, Elias answered naturally. "I know." I lowered my head, staring at the asphalt road, and said nothing more. The air grew awkward again, and more questions piled up in my mind, but I didn't dare ask any of them, like whether that cup of fruit tea really came from the astronomy club at all. Chapter 19. After I found out Capybara was Elias, I actually felt too embarrassed to tell him Monday was my birthday, but he still brought a gift. Clearly, he already knew. The funniest part was, he showed up in the capybara mascot suit, holding the gift box with two big plush paws. I stared at him wide-eyed and asked, "Why are you still wearing that thing?" From inside the costume came Elias's clear and calm voice. "Just as always, you're probably still more used to seeing me like this. Why do you think that?" He paused for 2 seconds before answering. "When I look like this, you smile a lot. But when you're facing me," Capybara lowered his head, and his voice dropped a little too. "You never smile." When I first realized Elias was the one inside the capybara suit, I had been shocked and confused, but never repulsed. It was a little like when a sea creature discovers that the girl hiding in a seashell turns out to be beautiful. I set down the 2 mini cakes, held the oversized mascot head in both hands, and gently took it off, looking straight into his eyes. I said seriously, "But I still think you look better like this." Elias looked down, avoiding my gaze, but still obediently took off the mascot costume. When he lowered his head, I noticed that both his ears were bright red. Just as I opened the cake box, the disciplinary director happened to walk by on inspection, even though there was nothing going on between me and Elias. Being caught eating cake alone together would definitely earn us a round of questioning, so I grabbed the cakes, pulled Elias by the sleeve, and dashed into the nearby equipment room, locked the door. Elias raised his eyebrows slightly, his voice full volume. "This isn't necessary." I quickly slapped my hand over his mouth and pushed him into the corner. The director, hearing something, glanced through the small window suspiciously. Elias braced one hand against my back and pulled me closer, then let go. The distance between us shrank instantly. That's when I realized my hand was still on his face, and I quickly pulled it away. Only Elias could see a little of what was happening outside through the window. I whispered, just with breath, "Is he gone?" Elias shook his head, but as he did, his cheek brushed against the cake I was still holding in my other hand. I pointed at it and mouthed, "Got frosting on your face." Elias tried wiping it off a few times, but kept missing, so I had to raise my hand and gently wipe it for him. Elias's gaze lingered on my face the whole time. The air between us subtly heated up. I felt the space grow warm and stifling. In the quiet corner of the equipment room that day, I could hear the uneven rhythm of a boy's heartbeat. Chapter 20. It didn't take long before Theodore and Ondine were allowed back in school. I still didn't talk to Elias very often, but somehow, Theodore had sensed something. That Saturday, while I was at home experimenting with a new cake recipe, Theodore called me using a different phone number. "Vicki, come downstairs. I'm outside your building." I was so startled I immediately covered the phone and rushed back to my room. "What the hell is wrong with you? If you keep stalking me like this, I'm calling the police." Theodore chuckled lightly. "Go ahead. Before they arrive, I'll scream loud enough for the whole building to know your name." I gripped my phone in anger, but in the end, I still had to cave to this kind of shameless behavior. After changing clothes and going downstairs, the first thing I did was slap him across the face. Theodore, what kind of psycho episode are you having now? He didn't care at all, just stared at me with that arrogant little smirk. I just want to know, how did you stop liking me so fast? Then, like something clicked. His smile faded a little as he asked, is it because of Elias? I found it absurd. No, it's because I realized you're not worth liking. I even regret ever having liked you at all. Theodore narrowed his eyes and smirked. Why do you sound so eager to explain yourself the second Elias gets mentioned? There was no reasoning with someone like Theodore. I turned to leave. He grabbed my arm. What the hell do you want from me? I tried to kick him away, but he didn't even flinch. I was so angry I nearly cried, but held it in with all my strength. Vicki, do you really hate me that much now? I didn't answer. Theodore's voice sounded a little strained. Tomorrow, Vicki, just come watch my last game at the court outside school. After that, I won't bother you anymore, okay? Chapter 21. I had a feeling this wouldn't just be a simple game, so when I saw Elias dribbling lazily at the court, I wasn't all that surprised. Who brought that girl here? I heard someone in the crowd ask. She's obviously here for Theodore. Didn't you see? She even brought him water. Elias quietly met my eyes for a few seconds. Just as I was about to greet him, he turned his back on me, like a stranger. A vague, indescribable feeling of disappointment spread through me. Theodore came up to me, bending down so we were eye level. He grinned, a little wickedly. Vicki, watch closely. Watch how I destroy your Elias. And no cheering for him, okay? Don't forget, you came here for me. I said nothing, my expression cold. Right then, I really wanted to throw the water in his face. The crowd kept heckling and teasing. For real. Theodore, are you playing or not? Can you stop being so love-drunk and actually play the game? I clenched the water bottle in my hand and tried to explain. I'm not. Shoo. Theodore calmly cut me off. No explanations. Vicki, today you listen to me. Otherwise, our deal is off. I bit my lip, wishing I could stab a hole through him with my glare. He'd better keep his damn word. The game started off intense. Especially between Theodore and Elias, they dominated the court, constantly clashing. The referee's whistle was non-stop. By the end of the first half, Theodore's team led by 2 points. He flashed a smug grin. When Elias reached for a water bottle on the steps, Theodore kicked it away, then smiled and said, "Oops, my bad. Totally unintentional." The tension spiked instantly. Elias's teammates couldn't take it and started walking over, fists clenched. But Elias raised a hand to stop them. It was obvious Theodore was baiting them to make a move. With all the security cameras around, as long as he didn't fight back, he could easily have them detained for a few days. They glared at him but held back, handing their half-full bottles to Elias. There's no store nearby, just drink ours. Man, now's not the time for being picky, you're thirsty, right? Elias dribbled the ball absently and replied in a low voice. I'm good. I gripped the bottle in my hand tighter, tried to hold it in, but I couldn't. I stood up and started walking toward Elias. Theodore grabbed me. No, stay here. They all think you're my girlfriend. I stomped hard on his foot, forcing him to let go, then said loud enough for the entire court to hear. I'm done following your childish rules. Theodore, if you keep harassing me, I'll call the cops and report you for sexual harassment. I don't care if we go down together. And with that, I stepped on his foot again and ran. Funny how someone you once liked can suddenly become so utterly revolting. I ran up to Elias, quickly handing him the bottle of water. Here, unopened. He didn't take it. His gaze sharp. He's been bothering you? I nodded, twisting the cap open as I spoke. But I'm not afraid of him anymore. Just focus on the game, I'll cheer for you. Then I held the water out to him again. Here. Elias looked down at it. After a long pause, he finally reached out and took it. Vicki. It was the first time he ever said my name. Yeah. He stared at me without blinking. If I win this game, I'll tell you something. I had a feeling I knew what it was. My palms were sweating a little. I felt nervous. If you lose, You can still tell me, I stammered. Elias was firm. If I lose, I'm not saying it. He took a sip of water, then turned and walked back onto the court. I blinked. But even if you don't say it, I already know. Chapter 22. In the second half, Theodore was playing with a lot of aggression, and all of it was aimed squarely at Elias. But Elias was faster, sharper. By the end, it was practically a one-man show. He slayed the entire court. Elias's team finished with a double-digit lead over Theodore's. I ran up to him, handing him water and tissues, grinning up at him. You were amazing. Elias, he just sucked. Theodore slammed the ball hard against the court, his expression dark. He gave me a cold glance, then turned to Elias with a mocking smirk. She's painfully average. You know, was it really worth going all out just to steal her from me? If you want her, take her. Then he tossed the ball aside and walked off. I couldn't care less what that bastard said. As long as he wasn't harassing me anymore. A few pathetic words meant nothing. Elias usually couldn't be bothered with Theodore either. But this time, he didn't let it slide. He picked up the basketball and hurled it straight at the back of Theodore's head. Then said, in that calm and infuriatingly smug voice, I did that on purpose. Trash. Don't act like you're being noble. You don't even qualify to say the word give. Theodore's face turned pitch black. In the end, a few other guys had to half-drag him off the court. Chapter 23. Elias confessed to me on the way home. Vicki, you already know, don't you? That I like you. He was back in his usual clothes, wearing a baseball cap. He lowered his head as he spoke, hiding his face completely. I walked beside him, my mind swirling for a long time before I could steady myself. I nodded lightly. I had a feeling, but... I'm sorry. I looked down, kicking a small rock aside. I don't want to get into a relationship while I'm still in school. I could feel that I liked him, but not enough to go against my own principles for him. Then what about after graduation? He asked. I stayed silent, all the way until we were nearly at my place. Then I gave a solemn nod. Okay. Elias smiled faintly, and for once, he looked genuinely warm, softer than I'd ever seen him. Chapter 24. During the final half of senior year, Elias and I grew closer than ever. After school, he'd ride the crowded bus home with me. Over the holidays, we basically lived in the library. He taught me physics. I made him memorize classical Chinese. Theodore never spoke to me again. He kept cycling through girlfriends, getting more and more reckless. The only surprise came from Ondine, who one day stopped Elias on our way home. So, how long are you planning to keep this revenge act going? She asked. Elias, what? Turned out, she'd always believed the rumor that Elias had secretly liked her. She pointed at me beside him, her face on the verge of tears. You're only getting close to her to get back at me, aren't you? I'll agree to date you, okay? Will that make you stop? She thought Elias was just like Theodore, playing childish little games. Elias let out a cold laugh. Eyes lazy and indifferent. If I actually liked you, I wouldn't disgust you like this. Get it? It was probably the first time Ondine had ever encountered a healthy relationship dynamic. She stood there frozen for a long while, then finally ran off, her face pale. Elias wasn't the type to explain himself that much. I tilted my head and looked at him leisurely. Was that for me to hear? Hands in his pockets, Elias stared straight ahead, voice cool and casual. What are you talking about? Pretending like it was nothing. Chapter 25. Theodore had become so uncontrollable that even the school could barely deal with him anymore. All they wanted was for him to behave just long enough to graduate and be gone. But still, he got himself into trouble right before the college entrance exams. We were in the middle of reviewing our last set of mistakes when a girl stormed into our classroom, hair disheveled. The physics teacher tapped the multimedia podium. Miss, what are you doing? She ignored him, eyes locked straight on Theodore. Theodore, you better tell me now, who exactly is this girl you really like? I want to see for myself how she's better than me, worth dumping me for. Don't make me go from class to class looking for her. Theodore leaned back in his chair, casually sizing her up. Is this really worth it? If I'm tired of it, we break up, that's all. Clinging like this just makes you look cheap. Didn't you know that? His tone even carried a trace of self-mockery. The teacher's voice dropped cold. "Miss, please leave. We're in the middle of class." "Fuck your class," the girl shouted at the teacher, then turned back to Theodore. Tears poured down her face, her eyes teetering on the edge of madness. "Theodore, I'm telling you, I'm pregnant. If you dare break up with me, I'll jump off a building. I mean it." The entire class erupted in shock, but Theodore just kept slumping there, looking half dead as usual. It turned into a full-blown scandal. This time, the one who showed up wasn't the indulgent Mrs. Law, but his father, the head of the Law family. The moment he arrived, Mr. Law kicked Theodore square in the chest, hard enough to knock over both the desk and chair. "Useless bastard." Theodore coughed twice, not getting up right away. He slowly raised his head to look at me, gave a crooked smile, and mouthed the words, "I'm really fucked up, right?" I turned my head away and went back to reviewing my notes. Not the slightest ripple in my heart. Theodore's psychological mess was his own doing. Only he could pay the price. Chapter 26. Theodore's scandal quickly made its way online. Plenty of gossipers pulled up a list of all his ex-girlfriends and started critiquing them one by one. As his first public girlfriend, Undine became the focus of most discussions. She couldn't handle the looks and whispers, had several breakdowns in public, and eventually took a leave of absence to study at home. Theodore's situation was even worse. Under public pressure, the school finally expelled him. Even Law Group's stock price took a hit. Mr. Law was so furious he nearly beat Theodore half to death before shipping him off overseas. Then he brought back a previously hidden illegitimate son, clearly planning to replace the heir. But no matter how dramatic it all was, the scandal didn't last long. Soon enough, it was drowned out by the next viral headline. Chapter 27. Before entering the exam hall, Elias noticed how tense I was. He casually brought up a topic to distract me. How does someone like Theodore, who's been with so many people, still have fans? Doesn't anyone find him gross? He leaned lazily against a tree, calm and composed. "I'm not like that. I'm loyal, and this is my first love." I didn't react right away and asked absent-mindedly, "Oh yeah? Who was your first love?" Elias glanced up at me. "You." He was no longer the boy who blushed just because I said he looked good. He was still reserved on the outside, but his bold, cheeky side had fully come out now, plain for all to see. I tried to suppress the corners of my mouth from turning up, and denied it righteously. "Nope, I haven't said yes yet." We went back and forth like that for a while, and soon, it was time to enter the exam hall. I had started to tense up again, but the moment I sat down at my desk, I realized it wasn't scary at all. Just like usual, just answering questions. 3 days passed quickly. That evening, Elias and I had dinner together. On the way home, we only occasionally chatted about the exam questions. Every time he seemed like he wanted to say something serious, I would change the subject before he could. Sensing something, Elias grew quieter and quieter. When we reached the front of my building, he just reached out and ruffled my hair, forced a small smile, then turned to say goodbye. But I grabbed his hand, caught him off guard and pulled him back. As he stared at me in surprise, I rose on my tiptoes and kissed him on the cheek, then whispered softly, "What a coincidence. You're my first love too." Story 2. On the 7th anniversary of our marriage registration, Paul finally agreed to hold a wedding ceremony for me. But on the day of the wedding, his first love, Lily, who had been abroad for 7 years, stormed into the venue wearing a white dress, crying. She asked Paul, "Paul, do you really love her?" Paul didn't answer. Instead, in front of everyone, she slit her wrist in an attempt to kill herself. Just as Paul was placing the wedding ring on my finger, he pushed me aside and rushed toward her. 3 months pregnant, I fell off the high platform from his push, and my wedding dress was soaked in blood. Paul stopped the medical staff who came to help me, his words full of scorn. "She fell just from a little push? She's faking it. She won't die. Don't bother with her." Chapter 1. The wedding ceremony was lively, and the host was still playing love songs. Guests below the stage held up their champagne glasses to celebrate with me. Paul was calm as he slid a diamond ring onto my middle finger. Just as the ring reached halfway, a sharp and anxious female voice echoed through the venue. Paul, do you really love her? The questioning voice caused everyone to turn their heads. Lily, dressed in a white gown, stood there with tears in her eyes, staring at him. Before he could respond, in the next moment, a utility knife was pressed against her wrist, slicing deeply. Blood splattered instantly. Drops of blood hit the floor, painting a terrifying scene. Paul frowned, his gaze like rippling water, but his body instinctively moved forward, the eyes of relatives and friends below fixed on him. And he hesitated, standing still again, yet he still shouted loudly, "Call an ambulance now!" As Lily collapsed to the ground, he couldn't hold back anymore and sprinted toward her. In his haste, he shoved me aside with such force that I, in high heels, was thrown to the ground, unprepared. I hit the floor hard, my head crashing heavily, dizziness overwhelming me. Through blurred vision, I saw him holding his first love tightly in his arms, furiously scolding the late-arriving medical staff. "If anything happens to Lily, I'll hold every one of you responsible." One of the medical staff tried to explain. "Her wound isn't deep, comparatively. You should pay more attention to your wife who fell on the stage. Isn't she pregnant? She's bleeding a lot." The doctor hurried over to place me on a stretcher. But Paul, now devoid of the gentle demeanor he once had, looked terrifyingly ferocious. Grabbing the doctor's arm, he snarled, "Did I tell you to save her? I told you to save Lily. Are you deaf or blind?" Over at Lily's side, 2 nurses were already treating her, and her wound was quickly bandaged. Yet she still looked at me with tearful eyes, which only made Paul even angrier at me. The baby in my womb was already 3 months along, at a critical stage of development. Because of his shove, I had fallen hard, and now I felt intense pain in my abdomen. I didn't need to look to know that I was bleeding heavily. The once pristine white floor was now pooling with red blood. Paul no longer cared about maintaining his dignity. His words were filled with ridicule. "Falling from just a push? Can't even stand steady in such a big space? Lily's in trouble, and you just had to cause more problems? You're pregnant and can't even take care of yourself. All you do is create trouble for me. This ambulance is for Lily. If you want one, call it yourself." The doctor, frustrated by him, soon had 2 orderlies pin him down. Then they placed me and Lily in the ambulance together. Inside the ambulance, Paul clung to Lily's arm, his eyes full of anxiety. Only when the doctor reassured him for the second time that Lily's life was not endangered did his expression finally relax. He even ignored the doctor's next words, that I might lose the baby. Enduring the pain in my lower body and the discomfort in my abdomen, I listened to him nervously and passionately profess his love to Lily. Inside the cramped ambulance, free from the constraints of friends and family, he treated me as if I were invisible. "Lily, thank goodness you're okay. Do you know how long I've waited for you to come back? If it hadn't been for the need to secure a family alliance, I wouldn't have gotten married so quickly. The person I've always loved is you." Chapter 2. Lily, with tears of gratitude streaming down her face, basked in his caresses. In the same ambulance, the 2 of them leaned into each other, their faces pressed together, their skin brushing, as if they were the real family, the true couple. At that moment, it dawned on me that the past 7 years of my relationship with him had been nothing but a joke. No wonder he had always been reluctant to give me a proper wedding ceremony to announce to everyone that I was his wife. I suddenly recalled how he would always get unusually irritable whenever I brought up the idea of holding a wedding. Even when I had arranged everything perfectly, he would throw a tantrum, flipping the coffee table over in frustration. Or, on the day of the event, he would block my calls just before we were supposed to leave, leaving me anxious and panicked. In the end, he showed up 2 hours late to the ceremony. It was all for Lily, to vent his anger on her behalf. Did 7 years of being by his side day and night mean less to him than Lily, who had abandoned him and disappeared all those years ago? I thought back to the day we registered our marriage. He had held my hand, looking deeply into my eyes, and promised me I was the one he would never betray. He called me his wife for life. But now, with his first love back in the picture, all those vows had vanished into thin air. I closed my eyes, no longer looking at him. The doctors were doing everything they could to save me. The monitoring equipment beeped urgently. The pain in my abdomen began to subside under the effect of the anesthesia. But the blood flowing from me only increased as the small, fragile form was removed from my body. Sweat began to bead on my forehead, a thin layer of cold sweat that spoke of my helplessness and despair. I gripped the side rail tightly. But despite the doctor's efforts, the bleeding wouldn't stop. To my right, Paul was still doting on Lily, holding her hand and smiling tearfully. A nurse, unable to contain her anger, shouted, "Are you even a man? Your wife is hemorrhaging and on the brink of death." Only then did he turn to look at me. For a brief moment, the sight of the blood-soaked sheets startled him. He let go of Lily's hand unconsciously. After a pause, he finally opened his mouth. "The baby can't be saved, right?" The doctor let out a laugh of disbelief, as though mocking the absurdity of such ignorance from the president of Shengtian Corporation. This surreal scene was playing out before my eyes. So painfully real, I released my grip on the side rail. Paul's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. When he looked at me again, a hint of guilt appeared in his eyes. "I'm sorry, honey," he said, his tone feigning remorse. "You know I didn't mean it. This was just an accident. We can always have another child." I stared into his eyes and spoke slowly, word by word. "There won't be another, Paul. Never again." Chapter 3. Paul used the excuse of work to leave me alone in the hospital. I knew he was busy spending time with Lily. The next morning, while I was still in the hospital, I received a provocative video from Lily. In the video, Paul was lying naked on a bed, calling out suggestively, "Lily, it's just a shower. Why are you so slow?" She responded coyly, "Oh, stop it. I'm coming." When I saw the video, my vision went black. 7 years of marriage, shattered so easily. How ridiculous. If it weren't for the presence of our relatives and friends at the wedding, he and Lily probably would have lost all restraint right there at the ceremony. After we registered our marriage and moved in together, Paul had always been distant. Even during moments of intimacy, he seemed reluctant, always needing a few glasses of whiskey before he could continue. Back then, I naively thought he just wasn't used to the constraints of marriage. But later, he started staying away from home for weeks at a time, not answering calls or responding to messages. To him, he would always be the pampered young master who needed to be coddled and adored. Now, I suddenly felt at peace with everything. I decided to end this miserable marriage. To Paul, my life meant nothing. If Lily were to die, he would undoubtedly blame everything on me. I couldn't bear that burden. With trembling fingers, I opened the video. I played it in front of everyone. Shameful, suggestive noises filled the room. Paul's face froze in shock. He quickly grabbed my phone and turned it off. In a sharp tone, he demanded, "Where did you get this? Don't you know recording someone's private moments is illegal?" Paul cared more about his reputation and public image than anything else. A sharp pain throbbed in my temples. I held back his hand as he swung it at me and said calmly, "Your Lily sent it to me." His fist hung in midair for a moment, like an actor retreating from the stage at intermission, his voice falling silent. Lily, startled by his angry glare, stammered an explanation. "I just wanted to record our sweet moments. I accidentally sent it to her." "You're not mad at me, are you?" Such a pathetic excuse. Yet he believed it. As long as someone gave him an excuse to save face, he would take it. If I had done something like this, that fist would have landed on me without hesitation. Paul didn't respond to Lily. Instead, he met my disappointed gaze. Paul pulled a bracelet out of his pocket, made of colorful zirconia stones. Under the light, it didn't look quite as cheap as it was. I had already seen something much grander on Lily's social media. A bracelet made of over a dozen pink diamonds, strung together with a platinum chain. It was crafted by one of the country's top designers and took 3 months to complete. In the picture, Lily wore the bracelet. The caption read, "A gift from my mother-in-law always feels special." Below the post were countless likes and comments. "Aw, MG, your husband is amazing. Wow, just one of those diamonds is worth more than my entire year's salary." They had no idea about my relationship with Lily or that I was Paul's actual wife. They just blindly praised Lily, assuming she was married to the wealthier man. And now, Paul placed that zirconia bracelet in my hand with a sense of ceremony, as if it were something precious. He even seemed reluctant to part with it. This is a gift from my mother for our 7th wedding anniversary. Take it as an apology for the recent incident. Be reasonable and don't make a big deal out of it. After all, I've already lowered myself enough for you. As I took the bracelet, my hand slipped, and I carelessly let it fall to the ground. Paul stood up abruptly, his once gentle smile vanishing in an instant. What replaced it was a vicious sneer and angry curses. Don't think that just because you're sick, you can act high and mighty. This bracelet is something my mother gave you out of kindness. You, being so ungrateful, are completely unworthy of being part of my family. Chapter 4. I pushed his hand off my body. Yes, you're right. I'm not worthy. You and your mistress are a perfect match. You can go tell your mother that you've learned how to divorce like others. But let me warn you, my body hasn't fully recovered yet. If you hurt me, I'll have my lawyer send you a lawsuit. Paul sneered coldly, pulling his hand back and yanking the blanket off me with a loud swoosh. The once white bedding was already stained with blood. Despite the cotton pads and hemostatic medicine, small streams of blood were still seeping out. Disgusted by the sight, he quickly covered his mouth and nose with his hand, as if he had seen something filthy. The scene suddenly reminded me of when I lost my first child. He had the same reaction then. In the delivery room next door, other husbands anxiously waited outside, rushing to check on their wives the moment they came out. And Paul? He sat far away in a leather armchair, fiddling with his phone. He even played videos out loud, the sound of a female streamer flattering him filling the room as he grinned smugly. When the nurse came to change my pads, he looked at the bloodstains with the same contempt he was showing now. Despicable and revolting. What's wrong with you? You just had a little fall. There's no way you'd bleed this much. Anyway, if you're fine, I'll take Lily home later. You can stay in the hospital and recover for a while. Don't worry about doing housework for now. I ignored him. He continued to look at me, seemingly hurt by my indifference. Finally, he lowered his hand from his nose and mouth. Taking a cautious step toward me, he carefully pulled the blanket back over me. Even the nurse beside us sneered. Cheating right under your wife's nose. And still defending the mistress. Oh, by the way, aren't you the CEO of Shuntian Corporation? You look like him. Another nurse had already taken out her phone, started a live stream, and pointed the camera at him. Under the scrutiny of everyone, Paul shoved Lily's hand away and grabbed my arm instead, his expression suddenly full of affection. Gloria, give me another chance. I'll make it up to you. Bags, cars, houses, whatever you want. I'll get it for you, as long as you're happy. If you're still upset, you can hit me or scold me, whatever you like. Just don't hurt yourself over this. Lily stared at him, wide-eyed, as if she couldn't believe the stark contrast in the man she had once been so intimate with. She picked up a pillow and hurled it at him in rage. What about me? What am I to you? Paul turned back, his expression calm as he stared directly into the camera. Miss Lily, I think you misunderstood. He was as good at acting as ever, always knowing how to market himself. Now, he was playing the role of a doting husband. I have nothing to do with you. You fainted earlier, and I was merely concerned for your safety. Lily froze in place, while the nurse's phone camera remained fixed on them. As they talked, Paul had already pulled me into his arms, carefully keeping a meter's distance from Lily. Chapter 5. Lily stared at him for a few seconds before suddenly realizing something. She quickly pointed at me and said, "It was her. She deliberately sent me photos of her wedding with Paul to provoke me. She even said that unless I died, she'd never let me go." Her accusation quickly drew a lot of attention to the live stream. Viewers in the chat began to turn against me. Oh my god, this woman is so vicious. After all, Lily is his first love. If you ask me, the one who isn't loved is the real mistress. Paul doesn't seem like the type to hurt his wife. It must be Gloria who can't stand her husband's first love being happy and deliberately provoked her, even wishing for her death. Women competing against each other like this in modern times, so disgusting. Seeing the flood of comments attacking me, Lily grew even more smug. She rolled up her sleeve, deliberately showing the cut on her wrist. The white gauze wrapped around it showed no traces of blood anymore. The nurses' expressions began to waver. And finally, they turned off the live stream. Whatever pity they had for me was gone, replaced by disgust. Even the comments seemed to have affected their opinions. The doctor escorted me to a hospital room. After hesitating for a long time, he finally just offered a simple, "Take care." They couldn't involve themselves in other people's family affairs. After thinking for a while, I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. The male voice on the other end sounded delighted. "Gloria, you finally called me. It's good to hear from you. It's good to have you back home." I stayed silent for a moment before tears began streaming down my face. "Brother, can you come visit me?" He paused, as if something had dawned on him, and his tone turned anxious. "Gloria, has something happened?" I couldn't hold back my sobs anymore, and my voice trembled. "Brother, I want a divorce. I want to leave Paul." He agreed without hesitation. "Of course, I've been waiting for you to divorce him for years. If you're ready, I'll make sure nothing from his family affects you." I nodded. Paul probably wants the divorce too. Before I could hang up, Paul appeared at the door. He had been in another room with Lily, showering her with tender care. Completely different from the persona he showed on the live stream. Only after arranging her hospital admission did he show up in front of me. With a smile that suggested he'd done nothing wrong, he pulled out a chair and sat down beside me. "Gloria, are you really asking for a divorce?" He smiled gently, a rare sight. On his neck were the unmistakable marks of passion. I waved my phone, making sure he noticed the evidence. His face tensed, and he hurriedly pulled up his collar to cover the marks. "Mosquito bites from last night," he explained awkwardly. "You know how many trees and plants surround our place. It's inevitable to get bitten." I slapped his hand away when he tried to take mine. "Those mosquitoes must be very considerate. Biting only your neck so I could see it." Paul's brows furrowed, and his face hardened. "Gloria, don't push your luck. Everything you eat, wear, and use comes from me. Without me, what do you think you are? And besides, someone at my level having multiple wives is perfectly normal. And we're only talking about a first love here. Lily doesn't even mind your status. Why should you care? She's a graduate of a prestigious university, from a family of intellectuals. And what about you? All you have is that nouveau riche brother of yours. What else do you have?" He didn't just belittle me. He dragged my brother into it too. Without hesitation, I grabbed the glass of water by my bed and threw it at his face. Paul froze, water dripping from his hair. His expression turned dark, and his hand began to rise, ready to strike me. Chapter 6. I grabbed his wrist firmly. "Paul, this is a hospital. There are cameras everywhere. If you hit me, don't think it won't tank your company's stock price. And what about your family's reputation? Do you care about that at all?" I pressed him, my voice cold. He froze, narrowing his eyes as he studied me. Finally, through gritted teeth, he said, "You've really grown bold." He raised his foot to leave but then seemed to think of something. Turning back, he gave me a fake smile. "Gloria, no matter how much you make a fuss, divorce is impossible. Alive, you're my family. Dead, you're my family's ghost." A chill ran down my spine. He didn't love me, yet his control over me was suffocating. At that moment, Lily appeared beside him, wearing a sheer nightgown. Her hand rested casually on his shoulder, and Paul gently took her hand to examine her wrist. "How's your wrist? Does it still hurt?" Lily smiled sweetly and sat down on his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. "As long as you're here, how could it hurt?" she said coyly. I watched them with a cold smile. Lily, as if only now noticing me, began apologizing. "Sister, I'm really sorry. What I said earlier in front of the nurses was just to protect myself. Nothing actually happened between me and Paul. Please don't take it to heart." Paul turned his gaze to me, as if afraid I might do something to harm Lily again. His eyes stayed fixed on me. I stared at her coolly. "I believe you. Now, please take him and leave. I don't want anything to do with him anymore." Lily cast a smug glance at Paul before the two of them stood up. As they left, they exchanged a knowing smile. Paul sneered. "Do you think we want to stay here with you? Don't forget, your hospital bills are being paid by me." Lily tugged on his shirt. Paul, stop saying that. What if sister really decides to divorce you later? He chuckled coldly. She wouldn't dare. Without me. How could she survive? The two of them leaned into each other as they walked away, their voices fading in the distance. I steadied myself and looked at my frail body, still aching from the DC surgery. The pain in my lower abdomen was sharp and unrelenting. The reflection in the mirror showed a woman barely 30, yet strands of gray hair were already visible. This so-called marriage into a wealthy family had cost me far too much. A message came through on my phone. It was the draft of a divorce agreement sent by my brother. I didn't want anything from the divorce, but half of Paul's family assets were brought in by my family when we got married. Over the years, if not for my brother's overt and covert support, Paul's company would have gone under long ago. Now that the business was finally thriving, Paul erased all acknowledgement of my family's contributions, claiming instead that I was just a freeloader who did nothing at home. This time, with the divorce, I would make sure Paul walked away with nothing. Chapter 7. A week after my hospitalization, I returned home. Paul wasn't back yet, but on the bed in our bedroom, there were several used contraceptives. I didn't need to think hard to know they were the work of him and Lily. I packed my things, but the housekeeper, Mrs. Wong, tried to stop me. Madam, Mr. Paul has said that if you want to leave, you're not allowed to take anything from this house, not even the clothes on your back. I laughed in anger. Why don't you just take over this house yourself? Dragging her outside, I looked at the villa I had spent 10 years of my life building. Without much hesitation, I set the storage room on fire. Mrs. Wong panicked, screaming and frantically calling Paul. It's on fire! The house is on fire! Paul's furious voice came through the phone. Gloria, what the hell are you doing? Do you have any idea how much that house is worth? Can you afford to pay for it? I'm entertaining an important client at the office right now. I don't have time for your nonsense. If you want a divorce, let's get it done now. Just don't ever show up in front of me again. I laughed and replied, fine, Paul, let's get divorced right away. Just don't regret it later. Paul didn't understand the meaning of regret. That very evening, Lily showed up in front of me, proudly wearing a diamond ring the size of a pigeon's egg. Beautiful, isn't it? She said smugly. Paul bought it for me. I only glanced at it, and he insisted on buying it. $1 million for this blood-red diamond. He didn't even blink at the price when paying. I smiled at her, grabbed her wrist, and yanked the ring off her finger. Marital assets. Half of Paul's money is mine. You're flaunting something that belongs to me in front of me? Lily froze, then turned to Paul with a pitiful whimper. Paul, did you hear what she just said? Without looking, I knew Paul was behind me. He stormed over, separating us and snatching the ring from my hand. Marital assets? What money did you ever earn? Let me tell you, if you want a divorce, you won't get a single cent from me. Before I could raise my hand to slap him, a stretch limousine pulled up in front of us. Everyone's expressions changed. The window rolled down, revealing my brother. He gave Paul a disdainful gesture before driving off with me in the car. The divorce papers quickly reached Paul. At the same time, news broke of companies severing ties with his family's business. Most of Paul's connections relied on my family's influence, and now we were pulling out. Paul was left overwhelmed, struggling to keep his company afloat. Finally, he started calling me, but I had already blocked his number. Still, the messages kept coming. Gloria, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so petty with you. But at the end of the day, I'm still your husband. You can't ruin my family over something so trivial. Please, honey, pick up the phone. Let's not get divorced, okay? If you don't like her, I can send Lily abroad right now. He kept calling, but I didn't answer a single time. Eventually, he sent me a video, Lily being publicly scolded by him, humiliated in front of everyone at the company, unable to lift her head. In his voice messages, he sighed and complained about his difficult life, how Lily was useless and brought him no benefit. I forwarded everything, videos, messages, and voice notes, to the family group chat. This was the same group where Paul's aunts and uncles, who had attended our anniversary celebrations, used to send their scheduled greetings. Once the messages were posted, The chat went silent. No one dared to speak against Paul, nor did anyone defend me. So much for a loving family. I didn't care. After uploading all the evidence, I left the group chat without hesitation. Chapter 8. When I got to my brother's house, he greeted me with hugs and kisses, covering my face with slobber. You're finally back. After all these years, you've finally come home. From now on, just stay with me. Don't go anywhere else. He waved his phone, and Paul's pleading voice came through. Boss, please give me another chance. This time, I'll handle the Ching Ching Mountain project properly. I promise I won't lose money again. It seemed Paul still didn't know that the boss he respected so much was my brother, Oliver. To mess with him, my brother invited him to a rooftop dinner at the Fuhua Hotel on Saturday evening. That night, the top elites of North City would gather there. It was the perfect opportunity to pitch projects and secure investments. Excited about the opportunity, Paul bragged to me, Gloria, I don't need help from your family. As long as I have Oliver's projects, I can make a comeback. You'll regret this. That night, the wind was strong on the rooftop. I wore a burgundy evening gown and sat lazily with my brother on a spacious chair. We watched as Paul was stopped by the security guards at the door. He pushed and shoved, trying to force his way in, but failed miserably. 2 bodyguards gave him a left hook and a right kick, knocking him to the ground. Blood dripped from his mouth as 2 of his teeth fell out. Only then did my brother lazily wave his hand to stop them. Paul, furious and cursing, was dragged before my brother. Wait until I meet Oliver. I'll make sure he deals with all of you. In his stunned silence, my brother dialed a video call. The pinned contact on Paul's messaging app appeared on the screen. When the video connected, it was my brother's face and voice that greeted him. Paul was dumbfounded. You. I smiled and stepped in front of my brother. You what? Do you really not know by now? Your family's success came from my generosity. Think carefully about my last name, my full name, and who Oliver really is. Do you still have any doubts? I picked up a glass of champagne and poured it over his head. The white foam covered his hair, leaving him utterly humiliated, and I felt nothing but satisfaction. For a scumbag like him, even 1,000 deaths wouldn't be enough to calm my anger. Paul, if you kneel and lick the soles of my shoes, I might consider buying out your company and even covering the medical bills for your mother's heart attack treatment. My voice was calm and slow. Paul glared at me, his eyes wide with fury. But eventually, he lowered his head. In front of all the CEOs of North City, he knelt and even cupped my feet in his hands. Just as his tongue was about to touch my shoe, I pulled my foot away. I felt disgusted. Forget it, Paul. Go home and live with Lily. I'll handle the debt collection for your company. Paul's company had collapsed largely due to a broken cash flow. If I took over and managed it, there might still be some profit to salvage. For a long time, he knelt in front of me, like a dog that had lost its home, tears streaming down his face. He apologized and thanked me, word by word. I'm sorry. Thank you, Gloria. I learned of Paul's bankruptcy and subsequent suicide one morning. He jumped off a building, and from what I heard, he didn't forget to take Lily with him. In the video left behind, he cried bitterly. She stole all the company's cash and bank deposits. She deliberately seduced me in her nightgown and ruined my life. Gloria, I know you won't forgive me, but this time I truly know I was wrong. I'll give you an answer you'll be satisfied with. I wish you happiness for the rest of your life. Of course, I'll be happy. I sipped my coffee. Sitting in the living room, across the table, my brother was enjoying his breakfast. I knew my beautiful life had finally begun.